from LSM. Who's the LSM rep?
What do you all plan to do about the current cost of living situation?
Okay, and again, if we start with Robert, please.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for, I think, coming along, and colleagues on the panel for being available as well. So I'm a representative of the Labour Party for this discussion. My actual day job is I work for a local authority, but I also do trade union responsibilities as well. So I'm very much at the forefront of working people's challenges, the pressures that, obviously it's a party political meeting, so I'm going to say pressures that a Conservative-run administration and coalition previously of 13 to 14 years worth of austerity have brought in. I'm very much now seeing the brunt of that in this current cost of living crisis. I'm very grateful that is a question to ask. So what would the Labour Party do? Well, we are a party that has a very strong historical track record. When I was growing up, I just turned 30, which is a bit scary. I still think I'm young, but I'm probably not, maybe anymore. But I think I still am. But I benefited from a pro-investment Labour government, 97 to 2010. And what did that mean? So I went to school down the road at Ludsworth College, before that Thomas Estley and Oldville Primary School in Broughton Astley. I benefited, and my younger brother did as well, from things like new schools being built, four-star centres being created, and investment in new teachers. Labour, in its address of the cost of living crisis, recognising that it's a broader package. It's about things like energy bills. It's about the fact that people don't have enough money to take out to address those rises in inflation and energy bills. So I would say that the Labour Party's approach is first about recognising that the cost of living crisis is a long time coming. It's from deliberate political choices of a lack of investment and not reacting in the appropriate way to things like international conflict, which has led to food shortages and the prices of that going up, labour shortages related to things like Brexit, and problems with not an immigration system that isn't fit and proper for the challenges that this country has. And that has all led to effectively the pound in your pocket for working people not delivering as much as it could. And our promise is that things through a policy called the New Deal for Working People. So I'm a trade unionist for the trade union Unison. I'm the chair of the regional political committee for that. I'm a workplace rep for Unison. And things like the New Deal for Working People, it's available online. I very much recommend it for people looking at. And that addresses things specifically for working people, that the cost of living crisis has led to the deterioration of working practices. People don't feel safe and secure at work, and because of that you can't plan for the future. I am very fortunate that I, during the pandemic, was able to buy a house, but that was only really because, to be honest, I inherited some money from a relative that died. If I hadn't have had that, the current situation in this country is that people like me, and people like yourselves no doubt in a few years, unless you benefit from a false economy of perhaps inheriting wealth or living with mum and dad, as it were, for a long time, you will also face the challenges that people that have gone through the schooling and university and early sort of graduate system and early careers of that system will have. And the Labour Party is committed to changing those workplace rights. It's about working collaboratively with trade unions and employers to offer fair wage deals, which this government is, and I know we don't have a representative of the Conservative Party here today, but this government is consistently failing to deliver fair working deals. That's the problem.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, over to Mike, thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm not quite as young as him. In fact, my party is younger than I am. The party was only formed in 1970. Green Party is a little bit different, and our view of the cost of living crisis is, again, is partly what Robert just said, is that it's much bigger than this. The problem is much more endemic. And Robert talks about house prices not being able to afford to buy a house. Now, the top 10% of this country own 43% of all the wealth of this country. So the only way we address this is by actually introducing a wealth tax. That means taxing people's wealth, not just people's income. That means moving some wealth away from the richest in this country. Taxing the top 1% of this country, 1% of their earnings, 1% of their wealth, will generate £75 billion, which would help readdress some of these inequalities. Now, when I left school, you got free university education. Okay? I supported Led Dems way back when, before I joined the Green Party, because they promised to preserve that free education and that free university education. Now that's long gone, and all of you, if you go to university, will be left in massive debt. It gives you a massive disadvantage when entering the labour market. I will any opportunity to buy a house. That's got to change. You know, we've reached a point now where there's so much wealthy individuals and wealthy companies that needs to be moved out from them in some way to readdress and rebalance this economy. Now, we're reaching a point now where we've got, as Robert said, failing services, schools, hospitals, all the services are now failing. We need to get that money into those services. It can't just be a tax and income. A tax and income can only go so far. So the Green policy is actually to have a wealth tax to move actual money from out of those big fossil food companies, those really wealthy individuals, a lot of this are Tories and not here today, into your pockets, so that you have a future that you can actually build upon. Unless we do that, I really fear for the future of this country.
Okay, thank you. Paul, thank you.
Thank you everyone for inviting me today. I'm Paul Hartshorn and I'm from the Liberal Democrats. I actually joined the Liberal Democrats in 2018, so I've not been a long-standing Liberal Democrat, but I certainly have been since 2018. And I believe in a lot of their policies and what they're looking for. It really resonates with me. I think before we talk about the cost of living crisis, I think we have to look at the reasons. Some of the reasons why we've ended up where we are. And we hear that the government talk a lot about wars in Ukraine and the pandemic, but I think one of the biggest issues is the way that the Conservative Party have ran this country down in the last 13 to 14 years of austerity. And I work with food banks. I have 2 food banks that I work with, and it's an absolute disaster to see the queue to that food bank getting longer and longer every single week. I don't know whether you know, but also because of this government, this country is now the 3rd largest importer of food in the world. We have not supported food production in this country, despite what the Conservatives say. Many farmers in South Leicestershire that I go out to talk to are unable to produce food any longer. They don't produce the food that we need, which has pushed the prices of food up, and the war in Ukraine has made that even worse. So when we hit this war in Ukraine, because we weren't supporting our own economy, we ended up with food prices going through the roof. When I go out door knocking, when I go out speaking to people on the doorstep, and I do that regularly because that's something else I believe in. I believe I need to get out and speak to the electorate. One of the things that comes up on the doorstep more than anything is the cost of mortgages. Interest rates have gone through the roof. Now, I'm not going to tell you today why interest rates have gone up. I'm going to leave that to the financial experts. Some of it's down to crashing the economy that the government did with the Liz Truss, crashing the economy. Some of it's down to that. Some of it's, there are other factors. And of course, Brexit probably is one of those as well, but I won't go into that. But when you hear that people are unable to pay their mortgage, and then when you hear bankers' bonuses are going through the roof, for some reason, that doesn't resonate with me very well at all. Why the rich are getting richer and there's people unable to afford a home is just wrong, and that's wrong in this country. We are one of the richest countries in the world, and to see poor people unable to eat, unable to have a home, and unable to pay their mortgages is something that I find totally wrong. And then when I listen to bankers' bonuses, when I listen to the rich getting richer and more, just wealth of the rich is ridiculous. My grandfather always used to say that if the government don't do the right job and don't do the right thing, the rich will inevitably get richer and the poor will inevitably get poorer. And that is what's happened over the last 13 to 14 years. And that needs to change. And my party, if elected, would change that.
Okay, that's super, thank you. Okay, so what you will have seen so far is that we've got representatives from 3 really important parties. What we haven't got is representatives of all parties. Now, we did try very hard, and Paul was, great in trying to sort that, and Mrs Morris has tried really hard, but we weren't able to do that. So we don't have a representative from the Conservative Party. After this event, I am going to share those questions with any other people from political parties to see if they want to answer those for you, and then any others that we don't answer or we don't ask today, I'll, of course, give you the opportunity to share those as well. But it's important for us to think really widely, and on the first slide, we did say we've got a gentleman from the Reform Party who's not been able to be with us today. Okay, so that's just an explanation of, we're talking about the Conservative party in power presently. However, we haven't got anybody sitting here. They were invited, but we're not able to come. Okay, shall we carry on then with our next question? So we're aiming for about 3 minutes per person per question. Okay, so Dr. Francis, have you got a representative? Yeah. Thank you.
Public transport, particularly buses, are becoming rarer in our rural communities, which can negatively impact young people who can't drive. What's your plan to improve public transport to these communities?
Okay, lovely. And if we go for Mike first, please.
Pet subject of mine. I know Paul works in that area, but the pet subject of mine because on transport policy, in the Green Party we actually have the opportunity to actually help develop policy. So we've actually been having many discussions over the last 6 months on what the Green Party policy should be on public transport and the wider environment. Now, the big challenge we have here is, to my mind, it's completely failed at the moment. Even where you live in a reasonably major village. Yeah. The example I always give is, in 1960, if you lived in Weston, where I live, you could get into Leicester by public transport in under 10 minutes. That sounds amazing, doesn't it? That's before we shut the railway line. Even after they shut the railway line, it took you 30 minutes to get to Leicester, or just under 30 minutes. Okay? Today, it takes just under an hour. Now, just under an hour is not a practical way of getting into town if you're working there. That's taking 2 hours out of your life to go 7 miles in and out of town. That needs to change. How do we change it? Now, many of you would have seen that train in a field in Blaby. Yeah? Quite a simple change would be to reintroduce a train station in Blaby. That will take you under 10 minutes to get into Leicester. Now, there's actually no point in having a car then, would there? Because you could get into town very easily. Now, providing a bus service to every village that was practical, they got a reasonable amount of time to where you wanted to go, is something that is never really going to happen. Okay? We've got to think of new ways of delivering solutions, whether that's cycling, e-scooters, which I fully support, or EV car hubs, which is another thing that's beginning to roll out, i.e. we have cars you can share. Currently in the UK we have over 35 million cars for 70 million people. That's not sustainable. When all you lot start to drive, this won't be space on the roads for the cars. We've got to get away from this car culture. No, so it's a mixture of different solutions. And the other thing I suggest is, preserving bus service is not the way forward. It's rethinking how the service is delivered. Okay? Bringing them back into local authority control and actually have a proper integrated service. So if you want to get to Foss Park, you may have to catch 2 buses, but those buses will be linked together, so it's only taking you 10 or 15 minutes to get there. We've got to rethink how we do this. Proper cycling structure outside of the city. The city is doing a reasonably good job of developing the cycling structure. Outside of the city is a completely different story. There's no real engagement from the county council here, and we need some national investment into cycleways and to more ways of using those vehicles. And that includes e-scooters, which I do think are a major part of a decision going forward. I had a young lady, I'll take my daughter to, she's a midwife at Leicester General Hospital. I take her very early in the morning as an Asian lady on an e-scooter going to do the cleaning at Foss Park. I actually stopped at one point to ask her what she was doing and where she was going. She was going to do the cleaning. She used an e-scooter to get there. Yeah. Luckily, there's a reasonably good cycle path down there. Now, why isn't that a solution for everybody? Why is everybody being travelled around by car still? We need to change that philosophy.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, affordable, and I say affordable because buses have, outside of London, have gone up 89% in the last 13 years. So we now pay 89% more for our bus services than we did 14 years ago. So if you're asking why people are not using bus services, well, there we go, they're too expensive. But affordable bus, trams and rail services, they connect communities. And for far too long, we've ignored them. The Conservative government is in power now is ignoring public transport. It does nothing to help public transport at all. There was a great plan to build HS2, that's scrapped. I'm not sure whether I agree with HS2, but it was a plan. and it's been scrapped. There is the electrification of our rail, that's also been scrapped, or it's certainly stalled, it's just not happening. But what we need to do, and I agree with what Mike said, I think we need to, the local authorities, I'm a district councillor on Blaby District Council, local authorities need to have more control in the bus service. They need to have more say in what bus services we have, and they need to hold the bus companies to account to make sure they provide the bus services that we actually need, because they're profit-making organisations. If they see a route that's not going to make any money, they're not going to do that route anymore, and that community that route provides loses out, and there's very little anybody can really do about that. So we need to make sure that local authorities can hold these bus companies to account and make sure they provide the service that we need to provide. And if necessary, we need to be able to provide those bus companies support. We need to work with them. And we're not talking bus companies, we're talking rail and all the other services, all the other services, because it's far too easy at the moment, and it's far too difficult. It's far too easy to get in a car, and it's far too difficult to get on a bus. And it's got to change. And the only way we're going to do that is by local authorities and the bus companies working together. I just want to say one more thing. I was listening to Question Time, which is a passion of mine, last night, and they were actually talking about bus passes. And something that came to me was that we provide a free bus pass to the elderly, but we don't provide a free bus pass to the young, you. And it's you people that are going to continue to use the bus. We've got to encourage you to continue using the bus service. So I looked up what the Liberal Democrat policy is on that, and it's not to give you a free bus pass, but it is to give you a bus pass and to reduce the fares by 50%, because I believe that's what we can afford. Unfortunately, it's cost the Scottish economy far too much to provide free bus passes. But I think providing you affordable buses will encourage you to carry on using them, and maybe encourage you not to immediately think of getting in the car and getting to your education in the car.
Super, thank you. Robert.
Brilliant. It's quite refreshing to all the sort of which aligns on this issue that public transport is underutilised and not a political priority in this country, nationally speaking. I think, as was alluded to Green Party earlier, my actual day job is in public transport for the local authority in Leicester City. And because of that, I know firsthand some of the great things that we've managed to do in the Labour-run, this is where plugging the Labour-run authority in Leicester, about introducing bicycle lanes. Now that's a local initiative that we've had to make political choices about, and it's surprisingly, I find it continually surprising, really unpopular. The introduction of things like bicycle lanes, dedicated bus lanes, even though it means that sometimes your journey actually is proven to be quicker by improving the public realm and the highways to make it more user-friendly, safer, improving your air quality, all at the same time. The resistance that you continually meet from members of the public, this sort of car-centric, I'm going to call it entitlement potentially, it might be a strong way of putting it, but very much seems to be that for a long time in this country, the car, the motor vehicle, has had the priority in our sort of individual choices of how we get ourselves around, but also even nationally speaking. I think it's probably across a lot of governments, and that's seen at the moment with the cutting of High Speed 2, which was mentioned there. Buses specifically, so Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester used the powers that were devolved there, part of the devolution agreement, to take bus franchising and the running of services back in-house, and that was, I think, definitely a bad step that was made about 30-ish years ago in this country, where buses were basically put out to attend on the free market, as it were, to allow firms to run bus services. But what we know actually is that buses, especially in rural communities, they serve a social purpose. They might not necessarily run for a profit, but they are something that's much more bigger than that. And it's about getting people in isolated communities to areas that of their education, of work, and of family. And I say that the Labour Party has a good track record in places like I mentioned there, doing what I do for my job, more broadly on public transport, buses, cycling, and so on, park and ride schemes, to put into practice those views about that there are too many motor vehicles on the road. We are not a large country. We don't have enough. We don't need to be building more tarmac to put cars on there. We need to be travelling in different ways, and I think it's encouraging to know that we are broadly all aligned on that point.
Okay, thank you ever so much. Brilliant. Can I ask from now if we could, shall we go, we can go for 2 more questions within our timescale. If I ask you to go for 2 minutes with your comments, is that okay? Can we get a few more questions? Okay, right, so the next question comes from Mrs. Mifflin, please.
Yeah. What are your political policies to address knife crime and no killing?
And if we start with Paul, we're going to try for 2 minutes.
Yeah, we'll be a lot more brief. We could be a lot briefer now with the answers. Knife crime, absolute disaster at the moment. I live in Blaby. I live not far away from here, and I see knife crime. I've seen it on my street first hand. A group of children fighting on my street with knives. I've never thought I was going to see this. Knife crime's a very, very complex issue indeed. And when you go out and speak to people who are carrying knives on the street, they're not necessarily going to commit knife crime. They're actually carrying them because other people have got knives and they're going to be. And it kind of becomes systemic. It kind of becomes a massive problem because one carries a knife, so another one carries a knife, so we all end up carrying knives, and it's got to stop. I think that our criminal justice system is broken. I think that needs to be sorted out. I don't think we don't punish people properly when they commit knife crime. But I think what we've done is we've let down communities, because I work with, locally, I work with youth clubs and places that people can do outside of going to school, especially for young children, especially for children around 13, 14, 15. There's nothing for them to do now. And we've stopped funding youth clubs. They don't get the funding that they deserve anymore. I know that the local youth club in Wexton really doesn't provide the services that it used to provide. I know that Blaby District Council used to be able to fund that, help fund what that did, and they don't fund it anymore. So we need to make sure that we provide things for young people to do, other alternative things for people to do, young children to do, give them something to go, places to go, things to do, other than let's just go on the streets and wander around with knives in our pockets, which seems to be what they seem to enjoy doing right now. So that's pretty much what.
And exactly 2 minutes. Brilliant. Robert, please.
Okay, I'll try to keep 2 minutes as well. I suppose there's 2 sides to this. It's the reasons why people maybe carry them. I think that's been addressed quite fairly there. I suppose the other side of it is, what do you do to dissuade? What do you do to reassure the public that you can feel safe in your communities? And to take Leicestershire as an example, since 2010, there are about 500 fewer police officers, PCSOs in the City, County and Rutland LLR area. So knife crime, it said, you're both a perpetrator, as it were, of that crime, but also you're potentially a victim. And I think the victims are being failed throughout the system broadly. We've seen the closure of magistrates' courts, we've seen fewer police officers. We talked, I think you said earlier about people turning 18. Well, on the 2nd of May this year, if people are old enough, you'll be able to vote in the Police and Crime Commissioner elections. It might potentially, I guess, be probably your first election. And there'll be candidates from all parties campaigning for that for the Thursday, the 2nd of May, which will be talking about what they believe, their party political stance on the change. And knife crime and crime more generally will be a point that the Police and Crime Commissioner has a role to hold the police force to account, but also they have the strategic choices of where they spend money. And I feel that the Labour Party position for the 2nd of May is that it is about that community investment, it's about working with community groups, about why people feel they need to carry knives, but also reassuring community groups that when crimes are committed, what Leicestershire Police are doing to reassure those communities. So it's about having those neighbourhood drop-ins, it's about being publicly accountable, as all sorts of public servants should be. And I feel that Leicestershire Police have got a track record, which is good, of working on this, but there's a lot of room to go to make communities feel safer, especially in the area of knife crime.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, I finished off the Green Party policy on crime, just to try and work out how I should answer this. We've got a very different approach to all of this. But back at one of Robert's points to start off with, yesterday was a meeting in Leicestershire, and that's the County Council's offices, with the Police and Crime Commissioner, setting the budget for next year. And they're making another 188 redundancies. So, just to back up Robin's point, yes, that's not police officers themselves, that's forensic experts or backup staff that police have. So, it's not going to improve in the near future. The big thing for me, though, is what we're seeing is not spiking knife crime. Knife crime's grown by 75% in the last 10 years. That's a scary number. If it carries on that rate, everyone's going to be carrying a knife very shortly. That cannot be the case. So there's a number of causes. It's a very, very complex thing to go into. One of the causes is down to drugs. And the constant drug problem, it's not been solved in my lifetime. The drug problem has been around, and it's one of the main drivers of gang and financing for gangs. Now, the Green Party is quite radical in that. In effect, we should legalise drugs. And that's going to shock a lot of people here. You can read our policies on our website. I urge anybody to do it. So, legalising drugs would get rid of a lot of police work that's currently today, catching very minor criminals and free up a lot of police time. As well as, when I went to school here in the 1980s, you could smoke in the school. Some people will know that. Okay? Now, that was outlawed and smoking is now sort of less common. Now, the same sort of approach will be taken. You legalise it, you educate people, and you regulate it, you tax it. It cuts out the revenue stream for a lot of gangs, and it cuts out a lot of bullying associated with that. That's just one aspect. Obviously, 2 minutes can give you more time to go into anything else. But I would urge anybody, for all our parties, look at the website, look at the policies we have, and that's just one example.
That's great, thank you very much. As an academy, so have we got, is it a representative from HMI possibly
So, as a school which is welcomes refugees, what are your opinions on the Rwanda deportation policy?
and that first goes to Robert, if that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, I find this Rwanda policy quite baffling in many ways. The fact that it's a symptom of a lack of investment in the Home Office. It's a symptom of a government which doesn't have. The problem is we've had so many different governments, technically speaking, since 2010, prime ministers, different secretaries of state, different parties in governance were since 2010, that there is no joined-up thinking on this, really. And I personally think that this Rwanda policy is more of a headline-grabbing initiative that is more deflecting away from the fact that we don't have a grasp on our borders in many respects, or immigration policy, and about why, and this is sort of where the Labour Party comes in, that there is a need for immigration, and that immigration has a long, proud track record in this country of benefiting our society and our workforce, and there is a need for that to continue. But the Rwanda policy specifically is, I'm noticing a sign of a total deflection, distraction away from a policy that and a government that is not in control of immigration. That money is going to be a total waste. We've wasted so much money on it already in the negotiations with the Rwandan government. Now, I think the other day the news said the Rwandan government say something, well, actually, you can finish the contract if you like, if you don't feel that it's suitable for you. So I think it's quite embarrassing for our own country that we actually have other nations saying, actually, we probably don't necessarily engage with you regarding your immigration scheme. What the Labour Party is proposing that it's more about collaboration with other governments. It's about understanding that where legal immigration is coming from, often with these sort of criminal gangs that go across the channel, and it's about understanding that these people are potentially quite desperate and in need of asylum, but it's about understanding that we have to work with other countries and agencies and invest in public services like the Home Office to have enough staff to deal with the massive backlog. And the Rwanda scheme does nothing to address that.
Thank you very much. Can we go to Paul, please?
Yeah, sure. You know, I think that the fact that this government is content to squander millions and millions of pounds on this total unworkable white elephant of a policy, it just says everything you need to know about where this government is right now. We've had 3 Home Secretaries, we've millions of taxpayers later, and the Conservatives have had nothing, absolutely nothing, to show for all this wasted money, wasted people. It's just a complete and utter waste of time, and it's just wasted. I just cannot get my head around it, why this government thinks it's important. I go out speaking to residents in this area, never ever does it ever come up on the doorstep about people wanting a Rwanda policy. So why they've got this in their head, I think just shows everything about how out of touch this government is with the people it's trying to represent. And absolutely right what you said, Robert. We need to invest in our Home Office. We need to make sure that we make sure that we actually process people who want to come into this country, because there are good people who want to come into this country. They're not all criminals. They're not all bad people. Some people actually want to come here and help us. This country was built on immigration. We've got to control it. We don't want to let everybody in. We need to have civil servants and the right ability to be able to do that. But we don't need to just pull up the drawbridge. That's absolutely ridiculous. And I'll just tell you a little story just before I go, and this is really crazy. I stay at, when I'm down in London, I stay at a hotel in London. And I phoned them up the other week and I said, can you stay in the hotel? He says, I'm sorry, you can't stay in the hotel, we're full right now. I says, well, we're not actually full. He says, we're only half full. He says, but we're half full of people seeking asylum, immigration. And I said, well, that's rather crazy. He says, yes, it is even more crazy. He says, because we can't actually get the staff to work in the hotel either. And the people who are actually here seeking the immigration to stay in this country are people who want to come and work in our hotels and hospitality industry that's falling apart because we haven't got enough people to work in it. I mean, what an absolutely crazy situation to be in. This government has just destroyed our immigration. We were told that Brexit was going to help us. It hasn't. It's made it worse. We need to get back, we need to talk to our neighbours, we need to have safe routes into this country, we need to fund our civil servants properly. And by doing those three things, we'll get this country back on track. And this immigration will help us make this country grow again, and it will help us grow our economy.
That's great, thank you very much. Mike?
Yeah, immigration, it isn't really a problem. I mean, the small boats thing is always thing that's quoted. About 3% of all immigrants come by a small boat. The other 97% come in perfectly legal route. Those 3% should be processed in France. They shouldn't be risking their lives trying to cross the channel. I'm thinking that the policy that my two colleagues here have said quite correctly is absolutely stupid, abhorrent, and disgusting in my view. There's one point I would pick up that I don't think has been raised yet. What the government are currently trying to do is pass through this regulation through the House of Commons and House of Lords in Parliament. Now, what they're trying to do by doing this is trying to go against what has always been decided as fact by the judges of this country. The Supreme Court of this country has said Rwanda is not a safe country. They're trying to pass a law which is almost trying to say the dogs are cats, and we can pass that law, and in future all dogs will be cats. That shouldn't happen. Now, the Lib Dems are trying to raise a policy in the House of Lords trying to support this, and we try to support it. Unfortunately, it didn't get passed. So it's likely this will go into law. So we may send one flight of people to Rwanda in the coming months. To me, that's a big shame for this country, a massive shame. Only last week, we gave asylum to 4 people from Rwanda because it wasn't a safe country, through our courts. How crazy is that? We're trying to send people to Rwanda, to a country we ourselves, through our highest court in our land, said is unsafe. So, backing my two colleagues up here, how on earth have we ended up in this situation? We do need to change this government, and we need to change it now. Unfortunately, we have to wait till the Cornwall election. Let's hope it's not in January next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was one thing that we had firm agreement on, and the word baffled might have been repeated. Okay, that is fantastic. Okay, and that kind of sums up our question time. If we could show our appreciation, please.